but also a city of decay, bankrupt, crime-ridden, and teetering on collapse. The NYPD was overwhelmed. Murders topped 1,500 a year, robberies and drug dealing flourished, and in the shadows, the Mafia thrived. At the top of the underworld pyramid sat the five families: Gambino, Lucchese, Genovese, Colombo, and Bonanno. Together, they formed a sprawling criminal empire. Their influence reached into construction, garbage hauling, labor unions, gambling, narcotics, even politics. And nowhere was their grip tighter than at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Interview: Frank Bowles, former Port Authority investigator. The mob had their hooks in everything at Kennedy. They controlled the unions, they had guys in the warehouses, even the coffee stands. If you wanted to move something in or out, chances are you were paying tribute. JFK Airport wasn't just a hub for travelers. It was a gold mine. Every day, cargo worth millions of dollars flowed through its warehouses. Electronics, jewelry, pharmaceuticals, and cash shipments arriving from overseas. Security was weak. Guards were underpaid. Doors were unlocked. Cargo handlers could be bought with envelopes of cash or favors. For organized crime, it was paradise. By the late 1970s, the Lucchese crime family had entrenched itself deeply at JFK. Truck hijackings, cargo theft, payroll robberies, all routine. It was a shadow economy, and the airport was its beating heart. But even in this world of easy scores, one opportunity stood above them all. Every month, millions in unmarked US dollars arrived from West Germany on Lufthansa flights. The cash came from American servicemen stationed overseas, their salaries converted and flown back to the US. It was intended for American banks. For a few hours each month, the money sat in the Lufthansa vault at JFK, guarded, but not well enough. To the Mafia, it was the score of a lifetime. Interview: former FBI agent. Everybody knew Lufthansa was sitting on cash. The question wasn't if it could be hit. It was who had the guts and the brains to pull it off. And in 1978, one man did. A man who saw opportunity where others saw risk. A man feared by his enemies and respected by his peers. A man who would mastermind the largest cash robbery in U.S. history. His name was Jimmy Burke. The world of the mob was about to change, and Jimmy Burke was the man who would change it. James Burke was not a household name, but in the underworld, he was a legend. Born in 1931, raised in foster homes, Burke's childhood was a cycle of neglect and violence. His foster father beat him. His foster mother abandoned him. By his teens, Jimmy had learned a hard truth. In a cruel world, survival meant control, and Jimmy Burke controlled everything. By the 1950s, Burke was already making a name for himself in Queens. Hijackings, loan sharking, bookmaking, always a step ahead of police, always calculating. They called him Jimmy the Gent because of his outward charm. He tipped well, he dressed sharp, he spoke softly, but beneath the gentleman's exterior was a cold, ruthless predator. Interview: Henry Hill, archival audio. Jimmy was the smartest guy I ever knew. He planned everything down to the second, but if you crossed him, you were gone, just like that. Burke became a trusted associate of the Lucchese crime family. But because of his Irish blood, he could never be a made man. That didn't matter. His reputation was enough. He ran a lucrative crew out of a small tavern near JFK Airport, Robert's Lounge. From there, he built an empire of hijackings and theft. Robert's Lounge wasn't just a bar. It was Burke's command center. Truck hijackings, drug deals, loan sharking. It all flowed through here. But Burke was restless. Hijacking trucks and skimming unions wasn't enough. He wanted something bigger, something legendary. And in 1978, he found it. Through his network of hustlers and informants, Burke heard whispers about Lufthansa Airlines. Whispers of millions in cash shipments flown in from West Germany every month, sitting overnight in the cargo terminal vault. It was the score of a lifetime. And Burke was the man to take it. Every mastermind needs a crew. And Jimmy Burke assembled one of the most dangerous in New York, Henry Hill, the hustler. A Lucchese associate with deep connections at JFK Hill was the one who brought Burke the Lufthansa tip, passed on from a gambler friend inside the airline. Henry Hill, archival audio. I told Jimmy, there's a score coming into Lufthansa, millions just sitting there overnight. His eyes lit up. He said, we're gonna do it. Tommy DeSimone, the enforcer. Young, fearless, and unpredictable. At just 23, he had already killed for the mob. His job, intimidate the guards, keep everyone in line. Tommy was loyal, but volatile. A ticking time bomb. Angelo Sepe, a veteran hijacker. Experienced, reliable, trusted to handle logistics inside the terminal. Joe Manri and Paolo Licastri, seasoned stick-up men. Both had mob ties, both were skilled with a gun, both eager for a piece of the biggest score of their lives. Louis Werner, the inside man. A Lufthansa cargo supervisor drowning in gambling debts. Werner provided the critical details, shift changes, alarm systems, guard routines, and, most importantly, the timing of the cash delivery. Interview, former FBI agent. Werner was desperate. He was in deep to mob bookmakers. Burke saw that and turned him. Without Werner, there's no Lufthansa Heist. Parnell Stacks. Edwards, the driver. A musician by trade, but trusted enough to handle the getaway van. His job was simple. Dump the van, torch it, erase the evidence. It was a mix of professionals and hotheads. But under Jimmy Burke's iron control, they were lethal. Together, they were about to attempt something no one had ever dared before. Burke had the plan. He had the crew. And he had the nerve to pull off the greatest robbery in American history. Every great heist begins long before the night of the job. It starts with whispers, with inside information. And Jimmy Burke had the perfect source. The key was Louis Werner. A Lufthansa cargo supervisor drowning in gambling debts, Werner was desperate. He owed mob bookmakers thousands. With no way to pay, he turned to Burke for protection. Burke gave him a way out. Interview. Former FBI agent Ed McDonald. Werner was the linchpin. He gave Burke everything. When the flights came in, how the guards rotated, where the vault was. Without him, there's no heist. Werner revealed the details. Cash flights from Frankfurt arrived late Sunday nights. The money sat in the Lufthansa vault until armored cars arrived Monday morning. Security was minimal. A handful of guards, poorly paid and unarmed. It was the perfect window. Burke drilled his men like soldiers. The rules were simple. 90 minutes in and out. No unnecessary talking. No killing unless absolutely necessary. And above all, no bragging, no spending big, no mistakes. Henry Hill, archival audio. Jimmy kept saying, you flash money, you die, you talk, you die, you screw up, you die. He wasn't kidding. We all believed him. Each man had a role. Tommy DeSimone, the muscle. Angelo Sepe, Joe Manri, Paolo Licastri, the stick-up men. Parnell Stacks, Edwards, getaway driver. Louis Werner, the inside man. Burke, the general. It was a tight crew, ruthless, disciplined, and ready. By December 1978, the plan was flawless. The only question left, would they have the nerve to pull it off? December 11th, 1978, 3 a.m. The air over Queens was freezing. JFK was quiet, its runways lit like frozen rivers of light. Inside the Lufthansa terminal, a skeleton crew shuffled papers, drank coffee, and waited for dawn. They had no idea what was coming. Burke stayed behind at Robert's Lounge, chain-smoking, waiting for the call. But his men were already in motion, inside the van. Tommy, Sepe, Manri, Licastri, armed and masked. Behind them, Parnell Stacks Edwards waited to dispose of the van after the job. At 3:12 a.m., the van screeched sideways across the access road, blocking the terminal. The guards froze, stunned. Then chaos. Dramatized voice, Tommy DeSimone. "Don't move, don't scream, and you'll live." Interview, Frank Bowles, former Port Authority investigator. They hit fast, hard, and quiet. Before the guards knew what was happening, they were on the ground, gagged, tied up. It was over in seconds. The crew moved with military precision. Within minutes, the guards were subdued. The office silent, except for muffled sobs. Now came the prize, the vault. Behind the steel door sat stacks of unmarked U.S. currency. Millions of dollars flown in from Frankfurt just hours earlier. The supervisor turned the key. The door swung open. Inside was a mountain of cash. $5 million in neat bundles, and nearly 900,000 more in gold and jewels. It was the largest pile of untraceable wealth any of them had ever seen. Henry Hill, archival audio. "When I heard how much they got, I couldn't believe it. $5 million in cash? It was insane. Nobody ever dreamed it'd be that big." Within minutes, the bags were filled. The guards lay helpless on the floor, listening as their world was stripped away. By 4:21 a.m., less than 90 minutes after it began, the crew was gone. The van slipped into the night, millions in cash and gold stacked inside. Not a single shot fired, not a single drop of blood spilled. At dawn, Burke got the call. The Lufthansa heist was a success. This is the largest cash theft ever committed on American soil. Authorities say the thieves escaped without leaving a single clue. In one night, Jimmy Burke's crew had pulled off the impossible. The score of a lifetime. The biggest robbery in American history. A job that would make them rich and make them legends. But legends come with a price, and soon greed, betrayal, and paranoia would tear them apart. For now, they were untouchable. But in the shadows, the first cracks were already forming. The Lufthansa heist was flawless. $5.8 million in untraceable cash. Nearly $900,000 in jewels. No shots fired, no witnesses who could talk, no evidence left behind. It was the score of a lifetime. But in the underworld, success is often the first step toward destruction. Henry Hill, archival audio. At first, it was like a dream. Everybody thought they were set for life. Jimmy said, "Don't spend a dime. Don't draw attention." But people didn't listen. The reckless spending. Burke's golden rule was simple: lay low. No flashy cars, no fur coats, no new houses. But temptation proved too strong. One by one, crew members broke the rules. A Cadillac bought in cash. A mink coat draped across a girlfriend's shoulders. Wads of bills flashing at bars and nightclubs. Each slip was a red flag to the FBI. Interview, former FBI agent Ed McDonald. Within weeks of the heist, we saw guys suddenly driving luxury cars, their wives wearing expensive furs. These were guys with no jobs, no income. We knew right away, this was the Lufthansa crew. Burke was furious. The sloppiness put the entire operation at risk. And Jimmy Burke had a simple solution for risk: elimination. The FBI closes in. Meanwhile, the FBI was circling. Agents swarmed JFK. Wiretaps went up. Robert's lounge was bugged. Suspects were followed day and night. Interview, Frank Bowles, former Port Authority investigator. We knew Burke's crew had done it. But knowing and proving are two different things. So we watched, we listened, we waited. But the longer the FBI waited, the bloodier it got. The murders begin. Jimmy Burke believed in loyalty, but he believed in survival more. And survival meant silencing anyone who might talk. Parnell, Stacks, Edwards, tasked with dumping the getaway van. Instead, he panicked and left it parked near his girlfriend's apartment, with fingerprints inside. Burke ordered him killed. Stacks was shot in the head. his body left in a Harlem alley. Joe Manri and Paolo Licastri, two stick-up men. They spent too much, too soon. Burke feared they'd draw heat. They were lured to a meeting, then executed and dumped in a car trunk. Angelo Sepe, another trusted hijacker, whispers said he'd been bragging. Burke had him erased. Interview, Ed McDonald. Jimmy was cleaning house. Anybody who might flip, anybody who looked the wrong way, he had them taken out. It was systematic. Bodies piled up across New York, in alleys, in trunks, in vacant lots. The Lufthansa crew was being erased one by one. The paranoia deepens. The killings solved Burke's problem in one sense. Loose ends were tied. But they created another problem. Fear. Survivors of the crew grew paranoid. Every phone call felt like surveillance. Every knock at the door felt like an execution. Henry Hill, archival audio. Guys were disappearing left and right. One day you saw them at the bar, the next day you heard they were found in a trunk. We were all looking over our shoulders. The FBI noticed too. The blood trail only confirmed what they suspected. Jimmy Burke was behind Lufthansa. But suspicion wasn't enough. They needed evidence. So the Bureau doubled down. Wiretaps, surveillance, informants. And in the middle of it all was a man whose reckless lifestyle was about to turn the case upside down. Henry Hill. The Lufthansa crew had gone from legends to targets. The FBI was circling. Jimmy Burke was killing. And Henry Hill was about to make a choice that would betray them all. December 1978. Lufthansa was a triumph for Jimmy Burke. But within weeks, the FBI was on his heels. Agents swarmed JFK. They interviewed every guard, every handler, every supervisor. They set up wiretaps at Robert's Lounge. They followed Burke's men day and night. Interview, Ed McDonald, former assistant U.S. attorney. We knew it was Burke. We knew it was his crew. But we didn't have the evidence. Lufthansa was the cleanest heist I'd ever seen. No fingerprints, no witnesses willing to talk. It was maddening. Burke's paranoia only grew. He silenced anyone who might betray him. Bodies of his own crew turned up in trunks, alleys, and lots across Queens. But the murders also gave the FBI something Burke hadn't expected, a trail of blood leading straight to him. The breaking point, Henry Hill. By 1980, one man sat at the center of the storm, Henry Hill. Hill had been part of Burke's world since the 1960s. He'd hijacked trucks, run scams, and even helped spark Lufthansa by feeding Burke the inside tip. But by 1980, Henry was out of control. Addicted to cocaine, running drug deals without permission, paranoid that Burke would kill him next. Henry Hill, archival audio. I was dead either way. If I kept quiet, Jimmy would whack me. If I talked, maybe I had a shot. So I talked. Arrested on narcotics charges, facing decades in prison, Hill flipped. He became the FBI's star witness. Suddenly, the code of silence was broken. Hill told the Bureau everything. Burke's role as mastermind, the planning at Robert's Lounge, the names of the crew, the murders one after another. For the FBI, it was gold. Interview, Ed McDonald. Henry Hill was the linchpin. With him, we could finally connect Lufthansa to Burke. Without him, it might have stayed unsolved forever. Burke's empire began to collapse. His paranoia deepened. He plotted more murders. He wanted Hill silenced. But the law had caught up with Jimmy the Gent. In 1982, Burke was convicted, not for Lufthansa, but for fixing college basketball games and other rackets. Later, with Hill's testimony, he was tied to multiple murders. He spent the rest of his life in prison, where he died in 1996. The cash from Lufthansa? It was never recovered. Henry Hill, archival audio. We thought we'd never have to work again. But look at what happened. Guys ended up in the ground, families ruined, and the money gone. Nobody ever saw it again. Epilogue, the legacy of the Lufthansa Heist. The Lufthansa heist promised fortune. It delivered betrayal. Not a single dollar was ever found. Most of the crew ended up dead. Jimmy Burke died behind bars, but the legend lived on. Tell us your thought in the comments section. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because here at TrueCrime C8D, we tell the stories you'll never forget. Remember to decease from crime, cause crime don't pay.